Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Go O's, everyone. Hi, everyone. Go O's. What's up? What's going on?
Not much. Why do you now have an O's baseball in your background?
I don't know. It's a good question. I have no
Oh,
idea. I
all
just
right.
found it and I'm like, now I'm playing with it. I don't know what to do with it. Look at that.
It could be
You know what's
bad
on the
luck.
other side? The other station. Whoops. Don't look too
Whoa,
quick. Don't look too
whoa.
quick.
Yikes.
Yeah, yikes. Yikes is right. What's up, Callow? What's going on?
Not much. You showed that Orioles ball and they got walked off by the Mets yesterday again.
Again.
So panic. Everyone panic.
Did you see the way the dude reacted after doing the walk off? He was
Yes.
pumped.
Yes. That was
Did you see the tweet from the Orioles where they called them the New York Mess? Did you see that?
no, I didn't see
Yeah.
that. Well, one, it was old pal Jesse Winker, who used to play for the Nats. The Nats traded him to the Mets. So that kind of sucks. And then the other side of that, did you see what the Mets put on the scoreboard after
No,
they walked him off?
no.
They put up that screen grab from The Wire that said, "We want you to put the word that we're back up," and that was just sitting there the whole entire time. Like people were gone for a long time. They just left it up there on the scoreboard.
Oh,
So
all
the
right.
Mets got cocky by beating the Orioles. That's the
So the
world we live
Mets
in.
and the O's hate each other. Okay. Who knew?
Yeah, little weird. Little weird. Yeah.
Who knew? Who knew?
Yeah.
So yesterday I went back out to practice again, and I'm here to report something to everybody now. And this is the first time I get to
Whoa.
say this. I'm here to report something now. It's time to get us all out of there because for the first time, I actually felt like I watched something real. And I'm not going to say formations because I don't feel like getting calls from DQ or Sean or anybody about it. But it was open to all of the media. If it wasn't, I wouldn't say anything about it, but it was. And I was standing there going, huh, okay, we're going to do a little bit of that now, are we? Okay, all right. Like we did a very cool wheel route to Austin Eckler behind a specific block of a specific receiver. And then they had this like power look where it was like definitively a run until it wasn't play action, throw to Bates over the middle. I was like, okay. And I'm just sitting there, I'm looking over at the coaches going, yeah, it's time to shut this thing down, guys. Right? Shut it down. You've gone the whole summer without showing us anything. It's time to shut the whole thing down. Let's get at it because I know you're not showing us anything Sunday night. So let's. Why don't we just close the doors a little early here? Because I think you forgot we're still standing on the sideline. Time to shut it down.
Wow, look at how things change. You're full let Cliff cook over there.
I'm going to let Cliff cook. I like what's going on over there.
It's your
I'm
boy.
going to bring up something in a minute because Ben tweeted out this piece from one of these football writers, and it's going to go down for me as one of those. This person has no idea what they're talking about. Tweets in a minute because it has no context whatsoever. This person probably hasn't been to one single practice or listened to one single thing the coaches have said, and because of that, he made conclusions about things that he saw in preseason games and decided nothing's changed around here with Kingsbury. And that's why I'm saying time to shut everybody out. It's time for everybody to go. They forgot we were still there today. They just had to make it 2 more days. That's all they had to do is make it 2 more days, and then they can run whatever they're going to run. But I saw the real stuff today, and I'm like, okay, whether it works or not, I don't know. But I'm just like, saw the real stuff today.
Sure. Okay. I mean, that's I guess good to know. I'm with you. I would have rather just not known that was happening. I would have rather had you just save that for another week. But okay. I mean, they got to practice it, I guess. So
yes,
whatever.
We got it in. All right. So let me show you this. Be interested to see this one. This one came. Ben Standig tweeted this. It's from this guy, Ian. And I believe Ian is either fantasy or pro football focus, something like that, like a legitimate person on the internet who follows football. And he puts this list of notes that he's seen from Cliff Kingsbury so far. And he said this: the Cliff Kingsbury experience has been on full display through 8 quarters of preseason action. Number 1 receiver Terry McLaurin is lined up as the offense's left outside receiver on 28 of his 29 snaps. That sort of stationary alignment was commonplace for DeAndre Hopkins when he played for Kingsbury in Arizona. And then at least he had admitted at a later point in this, he goes, by the way, when Hopkins played a lot, he actually had incredible stats out of this position, but that's besides the point right now. Then he said, also known for featuring a quick pace, league high 34% no huddle rate with the Cardinals, Washington has a ridiculous no huddle rate of 56.7% at the moment. The Steelers are in second place, 13%. Washington currently ranks dead last in shift motion rate, 10.6, and 31st in play action rate, 15.6. Two metrics that, again, Kingsbury ranked lowly, 32nd and 16th during his time with the Cardinals. Only the Eagles, 22.8%, and Panthers, 22.2%, have run a higher percentage of snaps featuring a pass run option than the Commanders, 22%. Cliff's Arizona offense is ranked third. Okay. Okay. This, if you read this and you look at this, your immediate reaction to this would be he's changed nothing. He's predictable. It's going to be the same thing. We used to talk about him a lot when he was in Arizona, and I'd say, are they too predictable? What happens when we get to December with them? And all of a sudden their offense wasn't cooking like it used to cook. And then there became this argument of, are they not adjusting under him, or is Kyler not capable of adjusting along with it? It became that kind of argument here. And I read this and I go, okay, let me take this point by point for a moment. And let me start with the McLaurin one. I know that he's not going to be stationary in the same position all the time. And the reason why I know that is McLaurin has told us that, and Quinn has told us that. I'm not saying anything that isn't public. McLaurin has told us that. So, Ian, is it possible that they're not showing you what they're going to do with him at this point? He's already said he's not going to be utilized that way exclusively this year at all.
Yeah, I mean, that could go for most of these points. This is preseason. No one shows anything that's real, and in fact, it's very vanilla in general. Why would they show anything?
Correct.
I like, this isn't the time to be worried, is what I'm getting at here. I'm not saying these trends might not happen, but you can't base anything off preseason play calling. Like, no way.
No. Okay, here's point 2. Always known for featuring a quick pace offense, 34.6% no huddle rate with the Cardinals. Washington has a ridiculous no huddle rate of 56.7 at the moment through the 2 games. The Steelers are at 13%. So most teams around the league aren't showing a up-tempo offense because they don't want you to see what they're going to do with an up-tempo offense. But if you listen to Dan Quinn last week, who held press conferences about this, he said openly, we're doing that on purpose because we need to run the offense this way. We need to have a practice game running up tempo. It doesn't mean that we're going to be up tempo constantly. We just feel like we have to do it. And it wasn't just Daniels doing it. It was Driscoll too. The entire first half, I think they maybe huddled up once or twice the whole time. But I knew going in, it was being done on purpose. They decided this is what they wanted to do with their offense. This is what they wanted to showcase. So, Ian, again, when you write something like that, you're making a suggestion that you're seeing something that isn't true. This is what they said they were going to do on purpose, for a purpose, and without any regard for what their offense is going to be in a couple weeks.
Right. I mean, once again, this also even goes into practice tendencies. You don't know what players are being asked to do on a play-to-play basis. Correct. Or a certain day of practice. They might be working on X, Y, or Z that might make A, B, or C look terrible that day as well. The same correlation happens in the preseason.
So another thing that Quinn's talked a lot about throughout the preseason is he wants to make sure everybody is communicating properly, that everybody's on the same page. And the only way to do that is to speed things up. He talks about it a lot on defense. He goes, I'll know they're ready when I hear them before I see them play. With the offense, one of the priorities of this past week was to try to go up tempo to see how they function as a unit. Would there be pre-snap penalties? Would they not be on the same page? Would they have to burn timeouts? Could Kingsbury get the calls in when they have to quickly? How does Jaden deal with it when we're just forcing him to be this way throughout the entire time that he played? Ian, had you paid attention to what they were doing? Because the way it's written, not that I think this particular report carries a tremendous amount of weight, but then once Ben tweeted it for our fan base, I go, they're going to read this and they're going to think that things aren't being done in a way that would either hide what they're going to do, or it's going to be tendencies that Kingsbury brought with him from Arizona, and they're not going to have this element of surprise. And it's actually the opposite that's happening. McLaurin said he's not going to be singularly in this position, but guess what's happened in the 2 games? It's the only place you've seen him line up. They have said they are going to be a much more diverse offense that leans on the run, and yet they ran a no-huddle offense exclusively in a game just to do it. Not to show the league that this is what they don't plan to be the run and shoot and try to run 100 plays a game. They're just trying to do it. And so I found this laughable. And I almost wanted to say something to Ben because I'm like, you know better than this than to tweet this out, because this person clearly isn't following along at all.
No, I mean, this is always the problem when somebody outside of the normal people that cover the team try to give you a, stats-based breakdown when they don't actually know what some of the storylines are. This isn't just preseason or training camp. This is for the regular season too. Like, you need context for some of this stuff. It goes across with, honestly, any sport, but specifically with football, you have no idea, unless you're covering stuff day to day, what's actually going on. I always like to joke about the Eagles fans last year remember they were freaking out, and you and me were like, they won 10 games. Like, how bad could they be? And it was like, well, day to day, we weren't covering them, and they knew what was going on. Like, this is one of those scenarios where you're just pulling out stats to kind of argue for your narrative, essentially. Yeah.
Yes, argue a narrative. They're using less shifts than everybody else. No kidding. They're not trying to show you what they're trying. That should have been the part, Ian, that stood out to you to go, wait a minute. Am I looking at something that's a carryover, or are they just literally trying to do something to either throw us off or work on something specific? Because that's what's going on here. The last point that he brought up about RPOs. Well, look who our quarterback is. I mean, that's the one thing that I would think that it's not going to be a surprise. Everybody watched him play in college. Of course, there's going to be RPOs on the offense. Yeah. There's no way there isn't going to be RPOs on the offense. So I would just say this, which goes back to what I saw. Granted, I'm there every day and that's all I'm doing. So when I read this, I'm like, this is preposterous. And then that's why I was like, when Ben tweeted it, I'm like, Ben, you know better than this. I don't know why you're tweeting this out. You know the purposes that they did with some of these things. And because McLaurin's told you he is not going to be singularly in this one position. Why would you give any credence to a scouting report that literally has no idea what it's talking about? And then I saw today and I went, I actually think I saw things that they're really going to do in games. And we're so close to closing the doors. DQ, Cliff, Witt, give it 2 more days. I know you're not running anything Sunday night. We don't need to see it, is the point. We don't, because everybody's guessing, including this person who has no idea what they're talking about. The advantage that they think they have is that people don't know what they're going to be. And I agree with that approach for at least the first few weeks. Let people not have the film on you. And I really believe they've gone out of their way on both sides of the ball to not let anybody have the film on them yet.
Yeah, I mean, and they shouldn't have that happen. I mean, we've referenced the 2 big things that have happened, or the 2 big references of that happening with this franchise. One was Terry McLaurin rookie year, when we were like, we haven't seen this guy play, and he lights up the Eagles. And the other was the RG3 offense. We had no idea what they were about to unleash, and they just go down to New Orleans and beat the Saints that year. Like, 100% with you. They shouldn't show anything, and anyone saying anything different, doesn't know ball is what I would say.
This is also annually, you'll find this out, and I obviously don't bet on the NFL because not only can I not do it, but like the more I'm around it, the more I'm like, the less I know. I'd rather not even do it. But like the first month of the season, you know nothing about anybody really, other than the Chiefs will be good, the Ravens will be good, the 49ers will be good, but they might not be great off the bat.
Yeah.
And there's other teams that, may surprise you. And then things shift after a month. These guys need film on everybody because nobody knows what's coming early in the season. And that's why there's a lot of weird scores and weird upsets and some things you're like, what's going on right now? It all settles down after a month. And this team has gone out of its way to say to the NFL and everybody here loudly and proudly, we are not going to tell you what we're going to be because we want it to be a surprise. And it was funny going down to Miami last week because they're at a stage where they go, y'all know what we're going to do. We'll throw some wrinkles in, but we're just going to practice it because, like, what's the point of trying to hide who we are? You got to try to beat us anyway. We're the best in the business. And I appreciated that because I watched it and I went, yeah, that's what you should be doing for training camp. I'm hoping in a few years, if Jaden is what I think he might be, we can do stuff like that. But for now, these preseason reports are preposterous, especially from people who aren't there at all or haven't paid attention to one press conference the entire time. Preposterous.
And just to piggyback too off what you said with the Chiefs, but like the Chiefs are now the Patriots too. The Patriots would start off and not be playing well. And what do all the shows go with? What's wrong with the Patriots? It's happened with the Chiefs 2 years in a row now. And it's what's wrong with Mahomes and the Chiefs? And it's like, guys, do you not get this anymore? Like, they start off slow, they figure everyone else out, and when they get in, you're not beating them, essentially.
That's right. They have Hall of Fame coaching and Hall of Fame quarterbacking.
Yes.
In the end, everything settles out.
Yes, right, exactly.
In the end. And I'm hoping we have that. We can say that in a couple of years. That's what I'm hoping we're going to be able to say, and we'll find out. All right. The other thing that's going on now down there is everyone's starting to try to take guesses at what the roster is going to look like next week. And there are a few spots that I do wonder what's going to end up happening here. And I would start with these on offense. Do they keep 4 running backs? Do they keep 4 tight ends? How many receivers then, if either one of those is 3, or if they keep 4, are they happy with 6 receivers? And who doesn't make it if that's the case? And now, because they're playing around with kind of this position flex to a degree, like Kaz Allen's now a running back all of a sudden, it's like they're kind of messing around on the margins with the roster, trying to find, I think, space for people and not lose everybody. So I'll start with running backs. I don't know that there's 4 that they have to keep, is the way that I would look at it. Like, we know who the top 2 are. They have to keep a 3rd for sure. I don't know who that's going to be yet. If that's Kaz Allen, then I have a funny feeling they'll keep a 4th, like either McNichols, maybe this guy Wiley, maybe Rodriguez, albeit it feels like I'm making a harder and harder case for him to make the team. But I could see a case where if they don't keep Kaz Allen, that they only keep 3, because the reason they're keeping Kaz Allen is to have him be a returner mainly and a total change of pace type player. And then at tight end, I go, okay, I know Bates, Sinnott, Ertz are locks and heavily used players for this team. Do they have to keep Cole Turner? Do they have to keep this guy Yankoff, who I know they like a lot and want to develop? Are they actually concerned that if they put him on the open market, he would sign with somebody else? And I don't think that would be the case. I think he would get to the practice squad. But then that turns into, how many receivers do you keep? And you can't then have Pringle and Crowder if those are your 2 returners. That's impossible at this point. So I think we are in a spot where they're going to have to get creative, like really creative, to try to keep all the things that they want, especially if they're earmarking people who don't do a lot other than these specialty things. I don't know how they're going to get around to 53 on offense that doesn't include making some real, like, tough decisions on a couple of guys and maybe not take the exact guy they wanted returning kicks or the exact guy returning punts, because there's just not room for everybody at this point.
I mean, I think right off the bat, I think it's going to be 3 running backs, 3 tight ends, and then it's going to be practice squad stashes. I mean, that's how I think they're going to operate.
I think they could lose Cole Turner if they cut him.
Okay.
I don't think they would lose this other rookie tight end because he wasn't drafted in the first place. And most of the time we always overvalue. Like I heard some people saying things like, don't cut Sam Hartman. And I'm like, why? He was undrafted. Like no one's going to pick him up to be on the main roster.
Yes.
So he'd have to go to someone else's practice squad. Why would he do that? Why wouldn't he just stay here at that point? It wouldn't make any sense for him to do that unless he was going to be on a main roster. But who's picking him up to do that? So you don't worry about that. And this guy Yankoff, I know they like him a lot, but he went undrafted. It's not like I think he's like some valued asset that's going to get picked up and put on a main roster. So I think you can move him. Turner's different though. He's played a little bit. He's got size. If a team is really short on tight ends, I think that's risky if you put him out there.
Yeah, but this always goes down to, like we talked about this last year. I forget which position group we talked about last year, where if you're down to Cole Turner actually playing, you're kind of screwed. Like, I mean, like this is where it gets really cynical talking about the roster. Like, same thing with running back. If we're getting down to the third running back because Eckler and Robinson are hurt, we're kind of packing it in anyways. Like, this is just where the roster like I feel like everyone overthinks it essentially this
like is everyone Ian's going, you are so in the weeds, it's ridiculous.
Yes, exactly. And so that's why I think 3 running backs, 3 tight ends is fine. And then I think they don't know what they have in the wide receiver room. And that's where I think it's going to kind of bulge. I think they're going to keep more wide receivers because they don't quite know what the mixture should be. So
if Kaz Allen stays, I think Crowder's in trouble.
Okay.
If Kaz Allen goes to the practice squad, I think Crowder makes the team because he's definitively going to be the primary punt returner at that point. But then I look at the receiving core and I go, okay, I mean, I guess Terry Zacchaeus is a vet, but McCaffrey is not. Diami, let's wait and see. I think how it fits there. Do you feel better having a veteran like Crowder or Pringle around on if we need to turn to a veteran at some point because we just don't feel like everyone's on the same page and we just don't want somebody who's been around the block? I think you have to think about that. Like this is not their best group. I think it's a deep group. I think it's potentially a pretty good group, but it's not what the Bears are throwing out there.
Yeah.
So do you feel like, are we relying too much on a couple of younger guys? Do we need to have a couple veterans there on the just in case? And that's an interesting thing to think about. And with Crowder too, honestly, like because you can put veterans on the practice squad and it's expanded, you can always keep him around unless he's another one that if he gets put out there and then all of a sudden someone goes, I need a punt returner, he might get picked up. It's possible.
No, exactly. I mean, that's the risk that you run, but same thing. Like it's one of those things. If you don't think you have someone better than him, then he should be on the roster. And that you end up eating that mistake in the end anyways.
Yes, you do. So we'll see how it goes. I think I'm on them. I don't see any weird decisions coming down the road, but some tricky ones for sure, at least on that side of the ball. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the defense soon. All right, let me take a quick break. Brad Watch the Show, ESPN 630 at Sports Capital. Welcome back. Brad Watch the Show, ESPN 630 the Sports Capital. So the news is already out there again. I think this was Sports Business Journal. I don't pay for a subscription to them, so I couldn't read the whole thing. So I'm just taking it.
I should have sent it to you. Yeah.
Okay. You want to give me the highlights outside of I read the first paragraph before it gets blurred out, for not being a subscriber. That basically was like Muriel Bowser has already hired a consultant, paid whatever amount of money for the consultancy. And the consultancy was to help the city figure out how they're going to build the stadium, how they're going to fund the stadium. And so they brought in what seems to be more about a financial expert for city planning than it's up to the team to bring in an architect. It's up to the city to figure out how to do this. And it's just another sign of, I think we all know where this is going, assuming the federal government's going to play along, but we're creeping. It's just another sign we're creeping a little bit closer. They're going to spend whatever it was, $500,000, bringing in a consultancy to explain to them how to find some kind of bond loophole or tax loophole to make this actually happen. because the ownership, as much as they want to go back to RFK, they're not going to foot the whole bill. And I think everybody knows that. And considering how much money they just gave Ted and how they often tell everybody that they're broke, it's going to be an interesting sell of how they're going to get around to. And oh, by the way, we gave the Commanders $1 billion to build this, whatever it's going to cost to do it. Because I've seen the price tags on these other stadiums in other cities. I mean, we're talking about a $2 billion project, of which half of which I would assume the city is going to, foot at least to make this happen. So how do they get around to that? I don't know. It's above my pay grade, but it is another sign that we're heading in that direction again.
So the Cliff Notes version of all of it was, it's not just how they're going to pay for it. It's going to be how that land gets turned over. It's the amount of jobs that get held. The number that they put on the story was 2,095 stadium jobs, plus a whole other mess of construction jobs. Mm-hmm. Then it was also...
Ted tried to do that too. In fairness, Ted's sitting there going,
sure.
Ted went, oh, yeah. You guys got on me about those job numbers when I was talking to Louise about it.
But remember, Ted's job numbers were ridiculous. Like, it was a ridiculous number. And we're all going, huh? Like, 2,000 jobs for a stadium actually doesn't sound crazy. For an NFL stadium, that sounds about right, actually.
Yes, but and in fairness too, and if anyone's sitting, not that I'm like caring about this part of it, but those jobs are for specific dates of a year, not all year.
Sure. Yeah, totally. I get it.
But like we're not talking about this, like this isn't Amazon HQ coming in here where we've got all these full-time jobs that show up here. I'm not dismissing this. They're jobs and they're important and I want people to work, but it's 10 Sundays, guys, like outside of whatever else ends up coming into a brand new stadium, which I would assume would be a lot of entertainment events for sure.
Right. So it went into the details of the jobs, the logistics of those jobs too, of like how that all works, like back of house type things was in there as well. What I actually found the most interesting, because I'm not breaking any news here. It's a consulting company. This is what they're supposed to do. What I found interesting was that contract is due to end September 30th. So they got a month and 10 days here to literally. Did
it say how long they've been under contract with them? Has it been months?
It didn't, but it said September 30th.
You don't hire somebody for that kind of money for a month or two. So they've probably been working behind the scenes with the city government, probably thinking that the federal government would have passed the bill by now, but your boy Danny Daines had to hold things up with the family in Wyoming. I don't know whether that's been settled or not because I haven't heard anything about it. I do know that hasn't gone back into committee yet. They are also on we're in convention season, so you're not hearing about anything that's happening on Capitol Hill, and we're tick-tock. I mean, the reality is it's not the election that's the deadline because everyone stays in office until January. But come January, if the balance of power is shifted on those committees or there is a different the presidency, well, there's going to be. But I mean, like if there's going to be a different party in control, then you don't know what's going to happen with the land. So the clock is ticking here. I mean, they've got September, October, they got 4 months. But the reality is like nothing's going to happen in and around the actual election. So you lose whatever that is. And then if it doesn't happen before Christmas, it's over. And then if everybody is still in the same positions that they're in, dependent on the results of the election, maybe it just gets picked up at a later date and maybe not. So the clock is ticking here for this to at least for the federal government to do their part to allow this to happen. But this was just another sign of we're ready. We have a game plan. We plan to explain to Tom Sherwood how we're going to do this. And, whether he buys it or not, we'll see. But they're trying. I mean, it is their way of saying we got to have creative financing. We don't have the money to just throw $1 billion at something. We have to figure it out.
There was mention in the story, though, about the same obstacles you mentioned. Daines was mentioned, but he was very throwaway in the article. They didn't think that was a legitimate threat. But they did mention, of course.
I would hope not.
Right. They did mention Van Hollen, though, for Maryland, that he's the one that's like, he has Maryland in his best interest. And that was
the bigger problem here. Yes.
Correct, actually.
He's trying to stand in the way. Yes. And he's just trying to do what he believes is right by his governor and his constituency. And I have no issue with that. Sure. hope that it doesn't actually totally thwart the whole thing, but I understand the positioning he's going to take for his constituency. I understand that.
Yeah, but my argument for the whole thing though was like, Van Hollen, you got Maryland voters that do want it in DC, so like watch out, what tree you go up there, pal. Like
Right.
you might lose some voters in your own state because you're trying to do the better thing. But what my kind of conclusion was on this was this is not unlike Jaden Daniels winning the starting job. He had to check boxes, right? The DC government.
I feel like we've been checking these boxes for 20 years.
Yeah, but Dan burned all of the boxes, so there were no boxes for years.
Yeah, Muriel didn't want to meet with him at the hotel and have discussions with him.
Correct. Yes, and so now new ownership. The papers are back. The papers got slid across the table, and this is box number one. You've got to research all of this because it's an important. You and I have said this many times before too. The city should have control of the land, right? Period. Yes. So this is the whole thing. It's a very important parcel of land in a city now that there's really not an inch of land to build things anymore. So they're doing exactly what they need to do and researching what they need to see what they get out of it if they were to do this.
Okay. So I was thinking about this. I read this today and I was having a conversation with, I think it was George Wallace, WTOP. We were talking about this. And I like see if you think I'm nuts. I had an idea here. All right, so let's just go down this road that RFK gets the stadium back, and we'll see where the training facility is. Whether it stays in Virginia, where it is, goes somewhere else, goes to Maryland, whatever. But it's not the stadium, okay?
Yeah.
And Maryland, openly says they have the money. They would like to do a stadium again with the Commanders. Does it make any sense to then shift the funds over to the University of Maryland and give them a world-class stadium?
No.
Why not?
Have they warranted that?
No, but I think that they cannot compete at the levels that they would at least attempt to compete at unless they did. And Bird, I think, is a problem, or whatever they're calling it now. I think it's a problem. And I go over there and I look at these football facilities and they're world-class. They're amazing. They're the best football facilities I've ever been in. And then you walk into their stadium and it's a mess. And I agree with you that they haven't necessarily warranted, at least from wins and losses, the perspective, like the money. However, if they're trying to divert these types of funds and build a world-class stadium literally on the edge of Washington, D.C. to have major sports going on right outside the city in the state, and then potentially lure all of these different events that can occur, it somewhat makes sense to me that Maryland ought to consider that. And, maybe the people at the university are psyched I'm saying it, but like it's overdue that they get a stadium that could compete in the Big Ten because they don't have one currently, in my opinion. And I don't think it's a lure. And I don't think they have a good tailgating experience. And I think if they want to actually try to really be competitive in the Big Ten and in college football in general, I think that's where it starts, actually, for me. It's not in the training facility. It's in a home stadium that people actually want to go to and revere and like and potentially would want to support.
You're so far gone from what they are, though. Like, this is the problem here. I've told you this before. My generation doesn't care. And it would take years and years. It would take decades to build that back up. They're not unlike what this organization is, the Commanders. Until they show you that they are competent and that they're going to compete, consistently here, why would you hand them a state-of-the-art stadium?
Well, I mean, you could say that about the Commanders. They have been in the playoffs like 3 times over the last 20 years. But they're getting a new stadium. No one's even thinking twice about something like that.
Because 1, they have new owners now. The other owner was the worst owner in all of sports. And 2, it's the NFL. It prints money. Even the worst team in the league prints money.
Let me see. Well, because Cleveland's getting a brand new stadium. They actually they were like, we looked into it and we'd like the really expensive new one, actually, guys. What we'd like.
Yes.
And they tried to say that really nicely. We looked into the other one, but I think we're just going to do that. And they're going to get it because everybody gets it. But I had an idea about this and I'm like, I'll run this by you. You're going to think I'm nuts.
Okay. Yeah, I will.
What if the stadium looked like a giant turtle? What if it did? What if the facade of it looked like a giant turtle shell?
I mean, that's great, but like,
It's incredible. Are you kidding? It's incredible.
what do you call in that stadium?
I don't know. But like, imagine that, like, kind of half roof or whatever it is, and it looks like a turtle shell, and the outside looks like a turtle shell, and his little feet are like at the corners of all of it. There's a head sticking out of it. Come on. Like, you want to make a statement. That would be amazing. And since Wes is going to spend the money on he's willing to spend the money on a stadium, and he wants to do something in this area, like near DC, it just occurred to me that Maryland should have one. And if they had one, do the coolest thing you've ever seen. Make it look like a giant turtle shell.
One, I don't disagree with you. It would be cool. Okay, let's say that it would be cool. But once again, I don't trust this organization with that, though. And how big are you making the stadium, or how small are you making the stadium?
I'm thinking like this is like a 50, 60,000 seat.
See, I disagree. You go less. I think you make it
45.
40, throw a dome on it, make it small, make it easy to get to.
Yeah. 40,000 people, if they can't fill that, useless, right? If you can't fill that.
This is what I'm getting at. This is what I'm getting at, though. Like, I don't know if that many people care about Maryland football in the area to go to every game.
Oh, see, I feel like, though, if they had a proper modern stadium with a proper kind of like setup where you could tailgate and actually make the experience like worthwhile, I actually think people would start to go more often, honestly. Like, if it was a great experience, I think people would go more often. Now, will they ever be able to compete with the Penn States and the Michigans and the Ohio States? Like, it's hard to see it. But when I look at what they have now, like, I love this football facility. They don't have tradition. They got a bad stadium. The in-stadium experience isn't great. And, it happens every year. They start 2-0 and everyone shows up, in black or whatever. And then they lose to Iowa 45-3, and then no one goes again. Well, at least if they had a great stadium experience, I actually think people would be more willing to be on board with it, with the ups and downs that exist. And then who knows, maybe you actually start to build some momentum with their alums and their fan base. But I think it starts with a new stadium now, actually. I think they have it backwards. It should have been a stadium, not the football facility, but whatever. It's too late now.
Yeah. I mean, it would take years and years to build that up, because I just don't think the demand is there. And I think you are understating, though, Maryland in the grand pantheon of DMV activities. Like, how this is in this area.
I agree.
It's an event town. None of those are events. Now, some Terps basketball games are, and that's what I'm getting at.
I agree, but keep in mind now with football, with the Big Ten and the SEC basically being the two conferences, they got USC coming here. Like, most of the games are going to be big brand games here now. Like, most of them are.
Calm down there.
Every other year, they're going to get Penn State or Michigan. Every other year, they're going to get Ohio State. Like, every other year, they're going to get Oregon or USC. Like, it's big brand football now that's coming in here. Like, the schedule is going to be outrageously good. Like,
calm down there, Bram Poland. Hyping up the teams that are coming in here. Are you kidding me with this? What is this? Like,
it's where I have to be at this point. Look, the Clippers have stunk forever. They just built a $2 billion arena with a lot of toilets in it.
Well, I mean, they're trying something completely different, but they're also in a league where if you're the second fiddle in your city, they still print money.
Yeah, I would just say this: at this point in college football, if you're part of the Big Ten or you're part of the SEC, you're part of the in crowd, and everyone else is the out crowd. I mean, so Maryland needs to start acting like it if they're going to be in this.
Maryland's been in the Big Ten for a decade, and we're still hyping up. Well, Michigan's coming. Ohio State's coming. Let's go see them.
Well, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. You got to sell the tickets. You got to sell tickets.
What do you call them? Lay Terps? Lay Terpens? Is that what we're calling them now? Come see the other opponents?
What is it? With Tony used to say 7-11 or 7-18 or whatever it was. They're always 3-1, and that's when it's going to go.
Every year.
Right. But you have to admit, though, if it looked like a giant turtle shell, come on.
Yeah,
That's
I
pretty
mean,
good.
yeah, that's cool. But like, you know,
Mhm.
that's cool after you've had 15 drinks and at at the VU. So, how
Everything's
realistic,
cool after you've had 15 drinks at the Voo.
right? So how realistic is that? It's not.
All right, let me take a quick break. Bray wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Bray wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, so I saw this pop up recently, and this is there's a Kirk Cousins birthday practice playlist that was put out by the Atlanta Falcons. Among the songs that are on this list, Mr. Brightside, so all the Caps fans are pumped. Kirk for that one. Stacy's Mom is on this as well. Great, seemingly very white guy song. Kryptonite by Three Doors Down. That's on as well. So what do you think of Kirk's playlist?
I saw this earlier and I like it. Kirk going full kind of 2000s, pop rockish. What I'm going to say here, Kirk sold out. There's no Creed on that list. And we know he loves Creed.
So I got a twist for you. There's a twist for me.
All right.
As it turns out, Kirk didn't make this list. The Falcons made the list and suggested these are the songs we think Kirk would like. Kirk apparently sent a message to Kyle Brandt of NFL Network and said, "That's not my playlist."
Yes, there you go, Kirk. There you go. He had to do PR and damage control. That's what Senator Cousins does. He makes sure that he gets the info out there.
What would he be more mad about at this point? That they're tweeting out music he might like, or that they selected Michael Penix?
Music that he might like, because that's.
I agree.
Because
I don't think Kirk shies away from competition. I think Kirk's like, go ahead, bring some rookie in here. I don't care. You gave me guaranteed money. But like on the set list, we saw this firsthand. Kirk's running around singing the music he likes. Don't tell me what I like, guy.
No, and Kirk, you got to remember, he's Senator Cousins. He has a very specific image that he wants to be thrown out there. That's right. So I think for him, it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I did not put this out there. I do not sing Stacy's Mom. This is a Christian household. We do not sing that song.
Mom.
Right.
See, that was a big miss. You all know what that song's about, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's not Kirk.
That's not Kirk. Yeah.
No.
Come on. Anyone that knows Kirk
is not looking at Stacy's mom that way. He might go with Stacy's mom to church. He might go to Stacy's mom to the potluck dinner. He might go with Stacy's mom to make s'mores in his backyard fire with his kids. But he's not going with Stacy's mom the way that song intends anybody goes with Stacy's mom.
And I would say this too. There were two musical pieces of Kirk when he was mic'd up with the Redskins. It was him singing Creed and him saying that he loved Hamilton. So you have a guy that likes Creed and likes musicals. And he was in musicals in high school too. There's those clips going out there. Yes. So I'm just saying.
Well, he sang at the NFL Awards last year.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So I'm just saying the Falcons, they failed on that one. That was a bad look. Bad look.
I got a hot take on Hamilton. I don't think it's going to age well.
I think you're wrong. I think you're totally dead wrong on that. Yeah, you're dead wrong.
I think the songs are going to end up feeling. I love that. I love it. But I have a feeling like at some point, someone's going to wake up and go, they rapped about Alexander Hamilton. Something's not right with all of that.
I think you're dead wrong. It's 10 out of 10. It melds theater and rap, which hasn't really been done like that. And you're wrong. You're wrong on that one.
I don't know, though. I'm going to hold on to this one. Mark this one down. Hot take. I think at some point, people are going to look at that and it might be Cats. Like, I think it's possible. Like, it's possible.
I mean, you still got Mamma Mia all over the place, too, dude. Like,
yeah, but Mamma Mia is a musical about, a woman with three men, all of which might be the father of a daughter.
And it's all ABBA. It's all ABBA. And it's survived. ABBA.
Yeah, but this isn't like those songs weren't written by Snoop Dogg. Like that's the problem here. I don't know. We'll see. I love Hamilton now. I just have a funny feeling it's not going to age well, that people are going to make fun of it at some point. That's what I think.
The musical with the Swedish pop group apparently is still timeless, though. It's 2024, playa.
ABBA's timeless. I hate to
know
break it
that's
to you. ABBA's
no,
timeless.
but I'm
It's
not
like
disagreeing
saying,
with you.
it'd be like if you looked at, if I turned the music off and you just watched Elvis jump around and gyrate on stage, you might go, what the hell was that? And I told you, like, this was for a long period of time the most famous musician in the world. I think like some young people would be like, if you just didn't play the music, you'd be like, what are you talking about? But when you hear it, it's timeless. It's timeless. And I think ABBA is timeless. Nobody sounds like them. They're timeless. This Hamilton stuff, I don't know that it's going to go down as like the greatest music that's ever been made. So we'll see. Don't get mad at me, Lin-Manuel. I love your play. I've seen it actually live multiple times. So don't hate me for it. I just have a funny feeling that this is not going to age particularly well.
I think you're wrong because I think it's actually what you're underselling what Hamilton is. And I think it's a gateway for people to watch theater that normally don't watch theater or Broadway. And that's actually what I think it's become is people that go, oh, I don't like Broadway. And then they watch this, and they go, oh, this is really cool. And all of a sudden it opens the door to them. I think you're underselling what it does.
Okay. So like Schoolhouse Rock in a way, like it opens the door for kids because they like it.
Maybe something like that. But I think like you look at people, because then what happened with Hamilton too is it was like you could try hating it, but so many people liked it. It became like, oh, like, well, then you've never watched it or you've never listened to it.
I didn't like it. I did.
No, totally. I get that.
I don't know if this is going to age. Like, it's like certain sitcoms, like they're incredible at the time. And then at a later date, you're like, why was that popular? Like,
but you know how this works too.
I watch the reruns of Friends now, and I'm kind of like, it wasn't that funny. Like, I don't know why people thought it was, but they did.
I would say this though, music ages completely different than sitcoms though. Sitcoms are pretty much used cars. The second they're put out, they have a half-life, essentially. They're descending fast. Music, you actually don't know.
Well, because they're also typically of the culture at the moment.
Yes.
And so everything about it ages poorly. No one dresses that way. They often don't speak to each other that way. And
technology.
The jokes could be cancelable, really all those things.
Correct.
Anyway. All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Brave watch the show. ESPN 630 Sports Capital.